Welcome back to the Tale of Desperauex. We're on chapter 29, and we are with Miggery Sow. And the last part, she was taken away from Uncle and has been taken to the castle. So she's very excited, and let's find out what happens. Miggery Sow's luck continued. On her first day on the job as a castle servant, she was sent to deliver a spool of red thread to the princess. "Mind," said the head of the serving staff, a dour woman named Louise. "She is royalty, so you must make sure that you curtsy." "How's that?" shouted Mig. "You must curtsy," shouted Louise. "Gore," said Mig. "Yes'm." She took the spool of thread from Louise and made her way up the golden stairs to the princess's room, talking to herself as she went. "Here I am, off to see the princess, me, Miggery Sow, seeing the princess up close and personal like, and first off, I must curtsy because she is the royalty." At the door to the princess's room, Mig had a sudden crisis of confidence. She stood a moment, clutching the spool of thread and muttering to herself. "Now how did that go?" she said. "Give the princess the thread and then give her a curtsy. No. First curtsy and then the thread. That's it. Gore. That's right. That's the order. Start with the curtsy and finish with the thread." She knocked at the princess's door. "Enter," said the pea. Mig, hearing nothing, knocked again. "Enter," said the pea. And Mig, still hearing nothing, knocked yet again. "Maybe," she said to herself, "the princess ain't to home no more." But then the door was flung wide, and there was the princess herself staring right at Miggery Sow. "Gore!" said Mig, her mouth hanging open. "Hello," said the pea. "Are you the new serving maid? Have you brought me my red thread?" "Curtsy I must," shouted Mig. She gathered her skirts, dropped the spool of thread, stuck out a foot, and stepped on the spool, rocked back and forth for what seemed like quite a long time, both to the watching princess and the rocking Mig, and finally fell to the floor with a Miggish thud. "Whoopsie," said Miggery Sow. The pea could not help it. She laughed. "That's all right," she said to Mig, shaking her head. "It's the spirit of the thing that counts." "How's that?" shouted Mig. "It's the spirit of the thing that counts," shouted P. "Thank you, miss," said Mig. She got slowly to her feet. She looked at the princess. She looked down at the floor. "First the curtsy and then the thread," Mig muttered. "Pardon?" said Princess P. "Gore!" said Mig. "The thread." She dropped to her hands and knees to locate the spool of thread when she found it and stood back up and offered it to P. "I brought your thread, didn't I?" Here we have a picture of Miggery Sow falling to the floor, landing with a Miggish thud. "Whoopsie!" "Lovely," said the princess, as she took the thread from Mig. "Thank you so much. I cannot seem to hold on to the spool of red thread. Every one I have disappears somehow." "Are you making a thing?" asked Mig, squinting at the cloth in the pea's hand. "I'm making a history of the world, my world," said the pea, "in tapestry. See, here is my father the king, and here he is playing the guitar, because that is something he loves to do and does quite well. And here is my mother, the queen, and she is eating soup because she loved soup." "Soup? Gore! That's against the law." "Yes," said the princess. "My father outlawed it because my mother died while she was eating it." "Your ma's dead?" "Yes," said the pea. "She died just last month." She bit her bottom lip to stop from trembling. "Ain't that the thing?" said Mig. "My ma's dead too." "How old were you when she died?" "Bold was I," said Mig, taking a step back away from the princess. "I'm sorry then." No. How old? How old were you?" shouted the pea. "Not but 6, said Mig. "I'm sorry," said the princess. She gave Mig a quick, deep look of sympathy. "How old are you now?" 12 years. So am I, said the princess. We're the same age. What is your name? She shouted. Miggery, Sal, but most just calls me Mig, and I saw you once before, princess. You passed me by on a little white horse on my birthday it was, and I was in the field with Uncle Sheep, and it was sunset time. Did I wave to you? Asked the princess. Huh? Did I wave? Shouted the pea. Yes, nodded Mig. But you didn't wave back, said the princess. I did, said Mig, only you didn't see me. Someday I will sit on a little white horse and wear a crown and wave someday, said Mig, and she put up a hand to touch her left ear. I will be a princess too. Really, said the pea, and she gave Mig another quick, deep look, but said nothing else. When Mig finally made her way back down the golden stairs, Louise was waiting for her. How long, she roared, did it take you to deliver a spool of thread to the princess? Too long? Guessed Mig. That's right, said Louise. And she gave Mig a good clout to the ear. You're not destined to be one of our star servants. That is already abundantly clear. No, ma'am, said Mig. That's all right, though, because I aim to be a princess. You? A princess? Don't make me laugh. This, my friends, was a little joke on Louise's part, as she was not a person who laughed, ever, not even at a notion as ridiculous as Miggery Sal becoming a princess. Chapter 30. At the castle for the first time in her young life, Mig had enough to eat, and eat she did. She quickly became plump, and then, plumper still, she grew rounder and bigger, only her head stayed small. My friends, as the teller of this tale, it's my duty from time to time to utter some hard and rather disagreeable truths. In the spirit of honesty, then, I must inform you that Mig was the tiniest bit lazy, and too, she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That is, she was a bit slow-witted. Because of these shortcomings, Louise was hard-pressed to find a job that Miggery Sal could effectively perform. In quick succession, Mig failed as a lady-in-waiting. She was caught trying on the gown of a visiting duchess. A seamstress, she sewed the cloak of the riding master to her own frock and ruined them both. And as a chambermaid, sent to clean a room, she stood open-mouthed and delighted, admiring the gold walls and floors and tapestries, exclaiming over and over again, "Gore, ain't it pretty? Gore, ain't it something?" Then, and did no cleaning at all. And while Mig was trying and failing at these many domestic chores, other important things were happening in the castle. The rat in the dungeon below was pacing and muttering in the darkness, waiting to take his revenge on the princess. And upstairs in the castle, the princess had met a mouse. And the mouse had fallen in love with her. Will there be consequences? You bet. Just as Mig's inability to perform any job, had its consequences. For finally, as a last resort, Louise sent Mig to the kitchen, where Cook had a reputation for dealing effectively with difficult help. In Cook's kitchen, Mig dropped eggshells in the pound cake batter. She scrubbed the kitchen floor with cooking oil instead of cleanser. She sneezed directly on the king's pork chop moments before it was to be served to him. "Of all the good-for-nothings I have encountered," shouted Cook, "surely you were the worst and most cauliflower-eared good-for-nothingest. There's only one place left for you. The dungeon." "Eh?" said Mig, cupping a hand to her ear. "You are being sent to the dungeon. You are to take the jailer his noonday meal. That will be your duty from now on." My friends, you know that the mice of the castle feared the dungeon. Must I tell you that the humans feared it too? Certainly it was never far from their thoughts. In the warm mouths, a foul odor rose out of the dark depths and permeated the whole of the castle. And in the still cold nights of winter, terrible howls issued from the dark place, as if the castle itself were weeping and moaning. "It's only the wind," the people of the castle assured themselves. "Nothing but the wind." And here's a picture of Mig. Excuse me. Many a servant girl had been sent to the dungeon bearing the jailer's meal, only to return white-faced and weeping, hands trembling, teeth chattering, insisting that they would never go back. And worse, there were whispered stories of those servant girls who had been given the job of feeding the jailer, who had gone down the stairs and into the dungeon, and who had never been seen or heard from again. Do you believe that this will be Mig's fate? Gore, I hope not. What kind of story would this be without Mig? Listen, you cauliflowered ear fool, shouted Cook. This is what you do. You take the tray of food down to the dungeon, and you wait for the old man to eat the food, and then you bring the tray back up. Do you think you could manage that? I reckon so, said Mig. I take the old man the tray, and he eats what's on it, and I bring the tray back up. Empty it would be then. I bring the empty tray back up from the deep downs. That's right, said Cook. Seems simple, don't it? But I'm sure you'll find a way to bungle it up. Said Meg. Nothing, said Cook. Good luck to you. You'll be needing it. She watched as Meg descended the dungeon stairs. They were the very same stairs, my friends, that the mouse Desperauex had been pushed down the day before. Unlike the mouse, however, Meg had a light. On the tray with the food, there was a single flickering candle to show her the way. She turned on the stairs and looked back at Cook and smiled. The cauliflowered ear good-for-nothing fool, said Cook, shaking her head. What's to become of someone who goes into the dungeon smiling, I ask you? My friends, the answer to Cook's question, you must read on to find it. Chapter 31. The terrible foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Mig. Perhaps that is because sometimes when Uncle gave her a good clout to the ear, he missed his mark and delivered a good clout to Mig's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted the proper workings of Mig's olfactory senses, and so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair and hopelessness and evil was not all that discernible to her, and she happily went down twisting and turning the twisting and turning stairs. Gore! Shouted Mig. It's dark, ain't it? Yes, it is, Mig, she answered herself, but if I was a princess, I'd be so glittery light-like there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me. At this point, Miggery Sow broke into a little song that went something like this. I ain't the Princess P, but someday I will be. The P, ha-he, someday I will be. Mig, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer, more of a bellower, really. But in her little song there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music, and as Mig went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat, wrapped in a cloak of red, and wearing a spoon on his head. Yes, yes, whispered the rat, a lovely song, just the song I've been waiting to hear. And Roscuro quietly fell in step beside Miggery Sow. At the bottom of the stairs, Mig shouted out into the darkness, Gore, it's me, Miggery Sow. Most calls me Mig, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deep Downs. There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous, scary way. It was quiet in the way of small, frightening sounds. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from around a darkened corner there came the low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of the rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon and their long tails dragging behind them through the blood and the muck. My friends, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all these disturbing and ominous sounds, and if I were standing in the dungeon, I would hear these sounds. If we were standing together in the dungeon, we would hear these sounds, and we would be terribly frightened. We would cling to each other in fear. But what did Miggery Sow hear? That's right, absolutely nothing. And so, she was not afraid at all, not in the least. She held the tray up higher, and the candle shed its weak light on the towering pile of spoons and bowls and kettles. Gore, said Mig, look at them things. I ain't never imagined there could be so many spoons in the whole wide world. "There is more to this world than anyone could imagine," said a booming voice from the darkness. "True, true," whispered Roscuro. "The old jailer speaks true." "Gore," said Mig. "Who said that?" And she turned around in the direction of the jailer's voice. Alright, we'll stop right there. Miggery Sal's in the dungeon. Roscuro's in the dungeon. I'm pretty sure Desperauex there too, because we just read that he was pushed down the stairs the day before Mig was given the new job of delivering food to the jailer. So all of our important people are now in the dungeon. We'll have to wait and find out what happens in the next part.